Hello, good day everyone. Today we are going to have a discussion on the short poem Morning at the Window by Eliot. We have done a presentation mode video on the same content. You can use them as a summary to your student, or you can use it as a revision. You can use the link below and watch it. If you still prefer reading, you can visit our blog using the links below. Our blog is www.eliotsprint.com. You can read many literature related posts in that, and you can subscribe to our blog to receive newsletter on new blog posts. Before going to the analysis, let's have a quick look at the poet and the poem. Thomas S. Eliot was born in 1888 in St. Louis, Missouri in the US and later settled in England. He is considered as a modernist poet whose poems with unique style and technique demonstrated the backward of changing European society due to industrial invasion and World War I. Morning at the Window was written in 1940, some months after the outbreak of World War I. It was published in 1917 in T.S. Eliot's first poetry collection. Eliot, in the poem Morning at the Window, captures the poverty, alienation, and unhappiness due to the adverse living condition in urbanized cities at the time. We all know that early 19 was the peak time of Industrial Revolution. The industrial development and rapid urbanization in Western countries led to the growth of large cities, which were overcrowded and had very poor living conditions. And then came the World Wars. Because of that, Europe lost an entire generation of young men due to the World War, leaving many women to shoulder the economy of the families. Here, Eliot brings the agony of such women workers as housemaids in the poem. The poet unveils the adverse effect of those which damage the entire humanity collectively, making people isolated in a deteriorating socio-cultural backdrop, suspecting each other. So we see it is a critical criticism about the contemporary society. So before going to the deeper analysis, let's read the poem first. There are rattling breakfast plates in basement kitchens and along the trampled edges of the street. I am aware of the damp souls of housemaids proud in despondent yet area gates. The brown waves of folk toss up to me, twisted faces from the bottom of the street, and tear from a passerby with muddy skirts. An aimless smile that hovers in the air and vanishes along the level of the roofs. Before going to the first stanza, let's have an overview of the poem. First, if we take a look at the title, so the title is paradoxical to the meaning of the poem. The title consists two words, morning and window. These words are naturally used to express about the pleasant sunrise and nature and invigorating feelings. But the poem is not about a pleasant sunrise. So the word morning can be taken as a wordplay to mourning, that means weeping of a person over something. We can see the Eliot's mastery of language to convey a precise meaning in the compact use of language. If we take a look at the structure and the form of the poem, the poet follows the Spencerian structure of stanza. That means 9 lines ending with an Alexandrine. So this type of form was used by Edmund Spenser to write about Faerie Queene, one of the most recognized works in which heroic deeds are narrated in an idyllic pastoral fairyland. So the use of this form can be introduced as a situational irony, because this poem was supposed to be used to describe an ideal pastoral fairyland. But however, Eliot uses this to describe an urbanized city. So we can assume that he uses this form to describe the reality versus expectation of the people. People expect a greener pasture in a city, but the reality is somewhat different. The real world is not always what people expect. The poem is unrhymed and the tone is sympathetic and nostalgic. The main themes can be poverty, ill effects of industrialization and urbanization, and the suffering of women due to world wars, because we know because of World War, most of the working force of men were destroyed. Because of that, women had to enter the laboring force. Narrates an objective observer of the event whose emotions are conveyed through his diction, because he doesn't directly tell something. We can see his emotion through his choice of words. The speaker may be the poet himself or the upper class citizen in the society, because he has a window. That means he has an ideal platform of life. A leisure morning by a window with a cup of coffee in his hand. People out of the window don't have that chance. They are getting up in the morning and running for their day-to-day works. So because of that, we can assume that he is an upper class citizen. So we can say the main technique can be the visual imagery. Eliot is able to put the reader in the mid of the scene, so the reader can experience and see everything happening in the poem. So it is a very good visual presentation. So let us move to the deep analysis of the poem. Before going to the deep analysis, let's see the first stanza and find the literary devices in the poem. They are rattling breakfast placed in basement kitchens and along the trampled edges of the street. I'm aware of the damp souls of the housemaids, crowding despondently at area gates. So let's go to find out what techniques you found in the poem and what are their significance. The first technique we find is onomatopoeia, rattling. Rattling of plates may show the rush of their work. Finish the breakfast quickly and wash the plates before going to work. We can hear the plates are rattling when they wash them in a hurry. We can see an internal rhyme, alliteration, breakfast, basement. The burst sound creates an unpleasant feeling. We can see souls of housemaids sprouting. So this sound generates a feeling of desperation, like sighing. So the technique number 3 is metaphor, damp souls. The damp souls suggest the unhappy state of mind of housemaids and their burdened lives, heavy with desperation and unable to be free. The next technique is symbol. Basement is a symbol for poverty or poor life condition. If you look at the history, poor people could not afford a house or a luxury room. So they lived in a rented basement, which were cheap, but the damn basements were unhealthy and never was a good place to live. As we said before, there are some visual imagery. Basement kitchen, trampled edges of the street. So these images reflect the poverty and deterioration of the people and the environment too. As well as we can see some kinesthetic imagery like sprouting. Sprouting is related to grass and small plants, just like blades of grass is raising their heads from the soil. Similarly, the housemaids are coming out of nowhere, just like they are coming out of the very earth. So if you look at the first stanza illustrates a day-to-day life of poor housemaids, and we can see his distant observation of these housemaids about their day-to-day lives. That means he highlights the poor life condition of housemaids in a poor and unhealthy setting or background. His emotions are displayed through his diction. He uses the words and phrases like trampled edges of the street, damp souls of housemaids, sprouting despondently, and so on. We can see his awareness of the hard life of the poor housemaid by the use of the metaphor damp souls. And further, the devastating effect of World War I, which stole the male labor, which is reflected by the word, the housemaids sprouting despondently at the area gates. That shows the number of housemaids who are going for work. That shows the lack of male labor. There is a very strong image in the poem. So let's move to the second stanza of the poem. And again we read the poem and look for poetic devices. The brown waves of fog toss up to me, twisted faces from bottom of the street, and tear from a passerby with muddy skirts, an aimless smile that hovers in the air and vanishes along the level of roofs. So if we go to the technique number 1, the first technique is a symbol. The fog is a symbol which symbolizes confusion or the blurred view of the speaker. So the brown waves of fog reflect the ill effects of industrialization. As well as these waves of dust appear maybe because of the amount of workers walking along the dusty road. And we can see repetition of anger. This shows the continuity of the vicious circle of suffering and poverty. And further we see personification. Fog toss up to me. It suggests his mental state, the ill effect of urbanization, industrialization, and poverty which hurt the upper class people too. If you look at the fourth technique, metaphor, twisted faces. So these twisted faces suggest the unhappy workers. You can see how the workers are moving without any smile in their face. Their lives are burdened with economical or social. There can be millions of problems. As we said earlier, the poem is rich with visual imageries. So we can see visual imagery like brown waves of fog, twisted faces, muddy skirts, aimless smile, and so on. And the last line shows the master of Eliot's language in poetry. He uses an Alexandrine in the last line. Alexandrine is a longer 12-syllable line, the standard pentameter one. Use of Spencerian style to describe the backwater of urbanization is his specialty. He uses this situation irony to describe the city. The Spencerian style was supposed to be used to describe pastoral beauty, but he uses that to deglorify the city. So we discussed about this earlier. If you take a deep look at the stanza further describes the setting and the nature of passerbys near the window. The narrator's or the speaker's eyes penetrate through the dirty outfits of the workers who walks by the window. He catches the remorseful faces, and he sometimes and occasionally catches a transient smile from the passers-by. So the visual imagery, the fog and the muddy skirt is a demonstration of polluted environment because of industrialization and urbanization. So the reader can see a highly populated city, highly populated area, just like a shanty. The speaker tries to grasp a smile which quickly vanishes along the level of roofs, suggesting that the happiness is something very hard to find in an urbanized city. Life burdened with hard work and poverty. Twisted faces and tears are clear depictions of the sufferings of the poor people in the city. We can see Eliot may be describing the city of London at the early 19th century, where the industrialization outbroke, the darkness of First World War was lurking. However, we can see Eliot tries to portray the suffering of poor people in industrialized modern cities and industrialized modern countries. If we draw parallels with the situation in the poem to the Sri Lankan context, we can see in industrialized areas, factory areas like garment factories, tea factories, the people and workers, they lead a very hard life in their boarding houses, in their shanties, and the reader may feel sympathetic about the predicament of those women in an industrialized setting, poor and lead a hard life. So, what is your idea of the poem? Please leave a comment to join the discussion. If you find this video is useful, please share it using the social share buttons below. You can always visit our blog and read new posts, and you can join Lipsprint community to share knowledge. If you are new, you can hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to receive future notification of our new videos. So that's the end of our video. Let's meet with another useful video. So until then, bye bye.